It looks like I have a flower growing out of my head. Let's move that over there. Hi! So I found this post when I was exploring Tumblr posts on Pinterest, as you do, because why not look at Tumblr posts on Pinterest instead of on Tumblr? Nothing makes sense anymore. And came across this hilariously entertaining post that is like, if you add dragons to anything, it automatically makes it better. And then, of course, I was like, let's add dragons to books. So we are going to be taking all kinds of random books of all kinds of genres and adding dragons to them to turn them into fantasy books instead. First up we have It Ends With Us and Dragons. This is an apocalyptic fantasy novel about the last two members of the human race when all of the rest of the human race has been destroyed by dragons. Dragons have come down, they have asserted their role as the top of the food chain, and there are only two humans left. Next up we have Of Mice and Men and Dragons. This is actually a fairy tale anthology filled with all kinds of delightful children's fantasy stories featuring our three main species as main characters, mice, men, or dragons. Next up we have The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue and Dragons. This is actually a non-fiction book, and as the title suggests, it is indeed a guide for the English gentleman to navigating vice, virtue, and dragons throughout your days at royal court. Next up we have Pride and Prejudice and Dragons. This is a Romeo and Juliet style fantasy about two dragons who live in opposing dragon villages and fall in love with each other in spite of their two families' prejudices against each other's dragon family. Next we have A Tale of Two Cities and Dragons. This is of course a story about two dragons who live in two different cities, separated by miles and miles of distance, fall in love with each other and can only communicate with each other through smoke language by sending smoke signals up into the sky to try and reach the other city to talk to the dragon that they have fallen in love with. Kind of a message in a bottle type scenario. After that we have 1,000 Splendid Suns and Dragons. This particular dragon fantasy is based on a land where the only light that you can see by is the light of fire from the dragons that are constantly flying around the earth and breathing fire in order to provide light to the people on the land below. Of course there are lots of dragons, which leads to the exaggeration of there being thousands of dragons who are all of course creating thousands of mini suns for people to see by. Next up we have Interview with a Vampire and Dragon. This is a light-hearted and comedic tale about a journalist who is trying to interview a very famous vampire about their success in the business world, but the vampire's partner, a dragon, keeps thinking that they should be the spotlight and keeps interrupting the journalist while interviewing the vampire with their own answers and their own accounts of the events of their life. And that is it for today's session of newly interpreted fantasy books. I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I hope that these books pique your interest. If they have, then please do pick them up and give them a read. I'm sure you will not be disappointed, and I'm sure they will be exactly as I have promised. I will see you in another video very shortly, I am sure, and until then, as always, stay classic.
Sit there and count your little fingers. Unhappy little girl blue.